When it was announced that Sir Christopher Nolan would be tackling the Odyssey, a task of incredible ambition, but not exactly one you think would test the boundaries of good taste, who would have thought it would turn into one of the most controversial films of the past decade before anyone had even seen it? The volume of outrage surrounding the pre-release of this film had even me, an ardent Nolan believer, wondering if he dropped the ball in the manner so much of Hollywood, and indeed the video games industry, has in the past few years. Thankfully, I'm happy to say the furore that dominated the pre-release period is not indicative of the final film, which is a true epic. 3 hours of 3 double-decker buses stacked vertically, screen-sized spectacle, an audio-visual storm, and in its rare quieter moments, a real ponderance on the horrors of war and a soldier's own morality. But I'm not just going to ignore the controversy, though. This is how discourse typically plays out online. Both sides become so entrenched that they can't see over the top and end up just yelling past one another. To some, the Odyssey is the final fall of Western civilization. To others, anyone who has anything to question about it whatsoever is an extremist bigot. I'm of the belief that listening tends to be better than shouting. So, is it strange that the film opens with fucking Travis Scott? Yes. Is it strange when British Indian actor Himesh Patel says in an American accent, "We are Greeks"? Also yes. Is it strange that Helen of Troy is Kenyan and a striking presence in a very short screen time, but no one else from Troy looks anything like her? Yes as well. Is Elliot Page a bit hard to believe as a Greek soldier? Also yes. The casting of this entire movie is controversial, and that is worth acknowledging directly, but the majority of the most controversial choices are barely on screen for more than a few minutes total. It makes it very strange that those actors were given such prominence in the pre-release. Controversy creates cash, maybe, though I doubt Nolan would even clock that, seeing as he's rocking a Nokia 3310, a notebook and a camera the size of a small car most of the time. And the truth of the matter is, Matt Damon, like almost everyone else in the film, looks about as Greek as me, which is to say, not very. So this stuff is mildly distracting, but it doesn't get in the way of the film, the story, the world, or the spectacle. But it would just be intellectually dishonest not to mention any of it. So, moving on from that, let's do the traditional thing. Let's get into the story. The Odyssey is an adaptation of the Homeric epic, starring the aforementioned Mr. Damon as Odysseus, a hero, and I'll leave that in inverted commas, of the Trojan War and king of the Greek island of Ithaca. He has the greatest of intentions to get home after a decade-long campaign, but accidentally pisses off the god of the sea, Poseidon, who fucks with his boat-based sat-nav and sends him down the equivalent of a decade of tiny country roads. But instead of angry farmers and terrifying oncoming drivers, Damon and co have to deal with a cyclops, deceitful deities, and the most horrendous rough seas since the last time I tried to get the boat across the English Channel. I'm happy to say the Odyssey is a success. Watching at the BFI IMAX, one of the biggest screens in the world and the biggest here in the UK, was a truly unforgettable experience, and the film carries a scale and spectacle that pretty much only Nolan can deliver. Saying that though, the special feature 5-minute trailer for June 3 might have even out-spectacled the Odyssey, but we've got a few more months to wait for that one. Some, though, have compared this to The Lord of the Rings. And that's where I have to hold up a yellow card, like the referee to any of Argentina's opponents. For all the incredible scale and pageantry on show, the Odyssey is its own beast, and it's incapable, honestly, of conjuring the deep emotional resonance that Lord of the Rings, or even Star Wars at its best, can. This is a Nolan film, which means the opening hour or so feels like being stuck in a washing machine going through its cycle. Storylines, characters, timelines, locations, intentions, they get jumbled up and thrown around like a tombola at a summer fair, with incredibly famous Hollywood stars pulled out seemingly at random for a quick monologue before you're hurled into the next scene. Is this the present day? Was that? Who are these people? Why are they there? Fear not, all will become clear. And anyone familiar with the source material likely won't feel quite as lost at sea. Be prepared, though, for an assault on the senses reminiscent of Dunkirk, Oppenheimer, and even Inception at points. The crew I went to go and see the film with all said the same thing afterwards. None of us could really remember much of it as soon as we stumbled out of the theatre. Like our brains had taken in so much information, we were incapable of processing it in the immediate aftermath. It's actually taken me a couple of days to let the film settle, just to be able to put this review together. But just as my jumbled mind eventually settled back into place, so too does the film, and the thrust of the story takes over. Odysseus and his crew are trying to get back to Ithaca, and in intervening years, a band of former subjects have become suitors for Penelope, Odysseus' wife, played with power and vulnerability by Anne Hathaway. And what plays out from here is a fascinating rumination on a concept the film hammers home repeatedly, it really does, Zeus's law. Essentially, this means that strangers must be housed, fed, and respected. So every encounter, everything that happens in the film prods at that conceit, from the increasingly crass and unwelcome suitors, headed up by a snarling Robert Pattinson, who doesn't quite get the screen time he deserves, to each of the pit stops, I guess you could call them, Odysseus and crew stumble into on their prolonged journey home. Man, but what pit stops? The first and the only one I actually remembered from my sort of vague understanding of the Odyssey as a kid is the Cyclops, and it is genuinely terrifying. For starters, impossibly, it's real. Well, I should say it's been built and put actually into the real world to be shot on camera. CG is pretty good these days, and I'm sure it's been used to enhance some of the aspects of this, but this giant fucker is actually shot on camera. And I'm not talking about Jon Bernthal's nose. No. From there, to an incredible lengthier sequence with Samantha Morton's eerie Cersei, to the criminally short encounter with the armored giant, seen in a lot of the marketing material, the shots that look like Elden Ring. The film just keeps circling this idea of Zeus's law. Where are the lines drawn? How does each person, each race, each crew interpret it for themselves? And what are the consequences of that? Now, as a result of that, a lot of these individual scenes actually often feel rushed or truncated. They never really get the chance to breathe because they're serving the overall machinations of Nolan's direction and his ideas rather than existing for their own sake. In some ways, I guess that mirrors the structure of the original poem. It's kind of episodic, but anyone expecting to sit and be drawn into a fantasy spectacle in the Lord of the Rings mold may leave the cinema slightly frustrated. Like the young chap next to me did, in fact, about 30 or 40 minutes in, he just got up and he never came back. I don't know what that was all about. Maybe he was on his own Odyssey, who knows? So the experience here then comes from being drawn into Nolan's machine. This is a film, his stuff, this is a film of relentless shepherd tone, that sonic trick that he uses to increase tension, relentless cross-cutting, to the point where you actually feel like you're on the crew of the ship, being battered by the waves. There are moments where I genuinely felt seasick in the audience of this film. And the waves here kind of represent Nolan's directorial tricks. I mean, he could do it listening to Zeus's law himself, honestly, because I didn't feel like a particularly welcome guest when I'm being barraged by that much information and noise and carnage the whole time. But the film does settle when it needs to. It does have its quieter moments. And ultimately, who am I to question the tension-building skills of one of cinema's true greats? But yeah, the shepherd tone's a lot, mate, honestly. Right, onto the cast. Everyone brought their A game. Matt Damon does an understated but excellent job as the forlorn, slightly flawed hero of the piece. This is not your typical action movie hero. This is a guy who's seen some shit. And it comes through in both his actions and Damon's performance, which is understated at times, overstated at others. It's really good. One of my favourite performances in the whole film is actually Himesh Patel's. Odysseus' right-hand man, Eurylochus. Fucking hell. I'm trying to remember some of these names. He brings a level of charisma and charm that really helps ground the movie. At times, he almost feels like the audience surrogate, like he's being dragged along by this whole thing. He's questioning choices here. He's ultimately standing for what's good, but never simply at Odysseus' behest. There's a good tension and counter-tension between the two. I think it's my favourite relationship in the whole movie, actually. Tom Holland does a solid job as Odysseus' son, Telemachus, perhaps veering a little into Spider-Man theatricality at points, but when he wants to quickly conjure real emotion, there's few better these days, honestly. Everyone else brings it, even without much screen time. We've got John Leguizamo as the blind pig herder Eumaeus. He actually gets more screen time than most, and he gives the film a kind of stable, stoic presence when it really needs one. Pattinson, as mentioned, he isn't on screen enough, but his portrayal of the thirstiest of suitors, Antinous, is gruesomely unlikable, smattering of Joaquin Phoenix's snivelling C-word Commodus from Gladiator here. Also, shout out to Jon Bernthal, Menelaus, he tears it up, and is ironically probably the only guy in the whole film that actually looks Greek. As for the controversial casting choices, total screen time across all of them, around 5 minutes. It ends up just becoming a bit of a non-event, to be honest. But non-event is not a label I could put on this film overall. The Odyssey is an absolute monster of a piece of cinema. And at its best, it is another example that no one else can do what Christopher Nolan does. See it on the biggest screen you can find. IMAX, ideally. I travelled 2 hours up to London to catch it at the BFI IMAX on opening weekend. Absolutely worth it. Unlike his other films, which like jump between standard aspect ratio and IMAX, this one's entirely in IMAX. And trust me, you want to see those helmet plumes the way they're meant to be seen. So having sat with it for a couple of days, I think this is Nolan's best film in quite a while. I'm not ready to put it up there with Interstellar, Inception, or The Dark Knight, not yet. But it is a better film than Tenet, to be fair. I do actually need to watch that again. I've only seen it once and it was baffling. And it is considerably better than Oppenheimer for me. It actually sticks surprisingly close to the original text narratively, despite some understandable veerings, but the thematic choices are the most different. Whereas the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, is largely about the triumph of homecoming, this is a film about pushing the boundaries of Zeus's law, about one man reckoning with what happened during a prolonged absence from his kingdom and a prolonged brutal war. How those two things clash becomes central to the film. I think watching it again with that in mind will make for a more rewarding, more emotional experience, because the moments you'd expect to be the emotional beats of a normal film don't always connect here, but others unexpectedly do. That will make more sense when you've seen the film. Because honestly, doesn't Nolan's direction just kind of create its own emotions anyway at this point? We all know that feeling by now. We've been in it. You sit there, you get overrun, you don't quite know what you're feeling until later. That's why it took me days to remember the film properly. It's genuinely different to anything else out there. So, do I recommend the Odyssey? Absolutely. See it as big as you possibly can. I'm in awe that there's a filmmaker who can spend this type of cash and deliver at this level consistently for this long, and I'm already looking forward to seeing it again. But yeah, it is still weird that it started with Travis Scott.